How do you write data to Kafka using Python? It's one of those things that's easy when you know how, so I'm going to show you how step by step. We'll do it completely from scratch, and we'll go through every line of code until we've got some kind of interesting working application that writes to Kafka. So, to fulfill that promise, let's create a brand new directory with nothing in it and prove that we're doing everything from scratch. If you already know how to set up a Python environment, you might want to skip ahead a minute or two in the chapter markers. But assuming you're still with me, I'm going to say Python 3, use a virtual env to create me an environment to develop in, isolated from everything else, source env bin activate. And now I can do pip install a couple of libraries. The first one I'm going to use is the standard requests library because I'm going to get some interesting data from the web for this. And the second one is I want to talk to Kafka using Python, so I'm going to install Quix Streams. And with that, I can actually start writing my main script. So that was step 0. Step 1 is to get some interesting data worth writing into Kafka. So let me import the requests library and say requests.get some URL with some parameters. And that will get me a response, which I will print, and then we'll know we're happy-ish. What data am I going to get? I don't go around memorizing JSON API details for fun. I promise you I'm not like that. But there is one I know which is useful to keep around, which is api.openmeteo.com v1 forecast is a really simple open weather forecast API. Useful for things like this. Thank you, OpenMeteo, for existing. If I give it a couple of parameters, the latitude I'm interested in, the, guess what, longitude I'm interested in, and then I'll be able to say, I would like something like the current temperature at an altitude of 2 meters above sea level. If you're an American viewer, you'll be wondering what 2 meters is. It's roughly the temperature that your smartwatch is going to record when you hail a taxi. For a person of average height, standing up, that's about 2 meters, give or take. Latitude and longitude. Again, I promise you I'm not the kind of person that memorizes these things, but I happen to know that 51.5 and minus 0.11 is London-ish enough for me. It's walking distance to a part of London I really like. I could get that more accurate, but then I'd have to be the kind of person that memorizes latitude, longitude to 6 decimal places. And it's not that bad yet. Okay, with that, why don't we run that and see what we've got and see if we're in a good place? Python, clear the screen. Python 3 main. I get a 200. Okay, so response.json. Yes, okay. That's some data I can stick into Kafka. We move on to part 2. And if you've just come back from the chapter markers, we have some JSON data that we'd like to write into Kafka now. We're all set up to go. So let me edit that file once more. And there are 3 steps to getting this into Kafka. I need to create an application object, which I will import from Quix Streams. I will import the application object. And then with that app, I'm going to say app.getProducer, which will give me a producer, which is Kafka parlance for a write-only connection. I'm going to take that producer and I'm going to say producer.produce something. I'm going to give it the data at that point. And then there's one kind of gotcha with connecting to Kafka. You really want to make sure that when you're finished with the connection, you close it cleanly. So I could, at this point, call producer.flush, and that would close it cleanly before the program exits. But I'm not going to. Instead, I'm going to make sure that Python calls it for me using with. If I use the with syntax, that will guarantee that any cleanup that needs to happen happens after this block. And I think that's a much nicer way to write it because you can't risk forgetting if you do it that way. Okay, so it's really just those lines, provided I fill in these holes correctly. So let's do that. Application, for development time at least, it only needs one argument, which is where do I find Kafka on the network? What's my broker address? And I'm running Kafka in development on localhost 1992, so I could do that. There's one other thing I'm going to set, which is going to make my life a bit easier. I'm going to set the log level to debug for this, so I'll get some more interesting output, and you'll see what it's doing a bit better. But that's enough for the application. I can move down to producing, to writing, to Kafka. And for that, I need three things. I need to specify which Kafka topic I'm going to write to. I think I'll say weather data demo for this. I need to give it a key. Well, I don't actually need to give it a key. Keys are optional in Kafka. It's a really good idea to supply one, something that identifies this data uniquely, a unique ID. I'm going to say London. I could give it something more fiddly and precise, but I think London will do for this demo. And then I can actually write in my value. What shall I have for my value? I think what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to say weather is that. Weather is the JSON response. And my value is take the JSON library and dump as a string that weather. And if I import JSON up here. Now, you could argue that's a bit strange. I've parsed the JSON here just to re-encode it as a string here. I actually like that because it's doing two things for me. It's checking that what I got back was valid JSON before we try and write it. And it's giving me access to the object because I'm going to want to extend this a little bit down the line into something more fancy. But we'll leave that for now just to say, do a round trip, make sure everything's okay for now. With that, unless I miss my guess, I think this is going to work. Let's find out. So let me rerun that and see what we get. Yeah, that was fairly fast. So if you have a look here, the app is starting. It's starting. It is getting a delivery receipt for sending that data to the weather data demo topic. A partition has been assigned, which I take as proof that it's actually been written. And there's the key and value we specified. And as I hoped, Kafka Producer has been correctly flushed before the script exits. So with that, I think we can call that a working how do you write to Kafka with Python app. And we could stop there. And if you're stopping there and you've got all the information you want, please click like on your way out. I'm glad it was helpful. But give me a couple more minutes because I think we can do something slightly more interesting with this and make it look like a real application. So I'm going to tidy this up a bit of refactoring. I think this is worth making into its own function. So let's do that and that. And then down here, we will say weather is a call to get weather. That's a bit neater. This, I feel, should be a main function. So let's do that. And we'll do the standard Python preamble here. If _name is _main, then call main. Why don't we add in a little bit of extra logging? Import logging and say logging.basicconfig. Level is debug as well. And we'll say logging.debug got weather like that. And what's going to make this feel more application-ish? Let's run this in a loop. So if I say while true, do that, produce it, and they then say logging.info, produced, sleeping, and then time.sleep for 30 seconds. Let's say 10 seconds, but if you're running this, please be nice to Open Meteo and dial that down to something sensible. And that should be something that continually polls for weather data and writes it into Kafka. Good. Let's run that and verify. I didn't import time. Let's fix that. Import time. Seems to be doing something. Got weather, produced, sleeping. Okay, let's go over to one more tab, and just to verify this independently, here's a little debugging tip for Kafka applications. kcat. If you don't know about kcat, it's really useful. It's a command line app to just inspect topics. And I'm going to tell it that my broker is on localhost 1992. I can tell it to act like a consumer, consuming from the topic weather data demo, and start watching from the end of the topic. And we'll just watch that for a couple of minutes to watch the data stream in. Except I have to watch it. You can skip forward in time by me speeding up the video like this. And we are done. Look, there's some weather data coming through. I think we can call that a proper working Python Kafka application. You can easily change that to fetch whatever data you're interested in. I suppose the next step is to read it back out using Python or do some processing on it using Python, but we're going to save that for another video. So if you've enjoyed this, if it's been useful, click like, subscribe for those forthcoming videos, and I'll see you again then.